We know a lot of different things play a part in your agricultural business. You have your livestock, crops, and the people who help you grow and raise them, but you likely also have tools, vehicles, and many different inputs that go into your day to day farm activities. And of course, places to store all of those things as well. Keeping track of what you have, how much you have of it, and where it's located is critical to efficient business management. And Farmbrite helps you organize all of that within the resources section of the software. Let's take a tour. I'll show you how. You'll see the resources section on the left. When we click it, it expands with three separate subsections: equipment, warehouses, and inventory. You can think of equipment as your vehicles and tools. Things that you need to keep service records for, that might have a make, model, and other identifying characteristics. Warehouses are the various locations that you might store things around your farm: a barn, a silo, a storage shed. You can also further organize your warehouses into bins, which might be a cabinet or a shelf within a building. Inventory is where you can keep track of quantities of individual items you have. This is connected to the warehouses, as you'll store the items in the warehouse locations that you set up. You can add and remove from this inventory manually, and use the items when working with your livestock and crops. You can even store finished products that you sell in your market here as well. Let's start by diving into equipment and take a look at some tools and vehicles. You can see that we are tracking all different types of things here: an air compressor, tiller, tractor, indoor grow lights for our greenhouse, farmers market supplies that we take with us to those events, a snow plow, a snow blower, an old Jeep, a new side-by-side UTV, and a pickup truck. You can easily add new equipment here and search through or filter existing equipment. And if you have a lot to add, you can also import your records. Let's take a look at our tractor as an example to see what else you can do. See that we can track all different types of information about it: its name, type, brand, model year, and identifying numbers. There's engine and transmission information, a link to a service manual for easy access, and additional data about its purchase. And if you don't see the field that's important for you, you can always create custom fields for your equipment to track additional information. On the left, you'll see other selections to work with the tractor. We can create scheduled events for it. Perhaps we have a mechanic coming by to perform some maintenance and need to remember when that's happening. Or maybe we do the maintenance ourselves and we need to create a task for the equipment and assign it to one of our farmhands. We might take some notes about it and record a service record once that maintenance is completed. This helps us track what we did. In this example, let's say we changed the air filter, and when we did it. You can track who serviced the equipment, and as a bit of a sneak peek into the inventory section, see that you can subtract from your inventory and use your inventory items when you perform equipment maintenance. We used one air filter, and can add a quick description if we needed. We can record the current hours or mileage, and add an expense if this service cost us anything. Clicking this box will put a transaction in the accounting section. I'll save the record, and we'll move over to that tab, and we'll see the cost for the recent maintenance here. This helps you keep track of what this equipment costs to run and account for expenses and income associated with it. You'll also see the ability to add photos of the equipment or upload files if you need, maybe a manual or a spec sheet. Now, let's move on to the warehouse section. You can see that we've created examples here like barns, warehouses, sheds, tanks, and silos. We've even added some of our cold storage refrigerated facilities. What all of these have in common is that we store inventory items in them. Whether it's a corn silo, fertilizer tank, hayloft, or storage barn with multiple cabinets, closets, and shelves, you can create a warehouse to track inventory with it in Farmbrite. Let's create one to see the process. We'll give it a name, the central warehouse storage, and optionally add an internal ID. We can then choose if the inventory capacity for this warehouse is tracked for the entire warehouse, or if we need separate bin capacity. Something like a silo or liquid storage tank would likely be set to only in this location, as it's one large storage container for storing a single item. In this example, though, we're going to track capacity in separate bins, as we will store different types of animal feed in different bins within this central warehouse. We'll save, and then set up those bins. As an example, we'll create bin A with a max capacity of 250 pounds. Depending on what you're storing, you can limit capacity using other measurement units too. And of course, if you're set to the metric system, you might see things like kilos and liters here. Be aware that setting capacity is optional. It's up to you if you want to track that or not. I'll save. I'll fast forward a bit with some video editing and see that we now have 3 bins available in this warehouse. Be aware that this structure is entirely up to you. You could get more detailed and granular by setting up a cabinet as a warehouse and the shelves in it as the bins, or less detailed with a large warehouse with no bins or capacity at all. It just depends on how you want to track your inventory. I have some existing inventory items that I've already created that I'm going to add to these bins, and to do that, we'll choose the plus button on the right. I'm going to add my cattle feed to bin A, and say that I have 200 pounds of it. You can also record a source, which lets you know where this inventory came from. And we'll do something similar with goat feed for bin B. And now I want to account for chicken feed in bin C. I don't have that set up as an inventory item yet, so to create a new one, I'll navigate to inventory and see a list of all the things that I'm already tracking. As a few examples of what you might store here, see the tomatoes that I've harvested from my crops, my plant fertilizer, motor oil for my equipment, milk from my cows, some finished products that I've made from my pepper harvest, and things like vaccines, gloves, and other livestock medications. We can see how much we have in stock and its estimated value. You can also easily search your inventory to find just what you're looking for. Now, let's add a new inventory item type to track that chicken feed that we just discussed. After giving it a name, we can optionally add a variety to it. If we have pellets and chicken scratch for feed, we might need to track them separately, even though they're both chicken feed. You can add a SKU if that helps you track your item internally, and then choose an inventory unit. This is how you measure this particular item. For chicken feed in the US, I'm going to use pounds, but check out all the other units that you can use to store your items. Perhaps bushels of a harvested crop, bales of hay, or gallons of milk. Note that the selection for quantity is made as a catch-all unit for whatever you want to measure. For example, if I wanted to count my chicken feed as the number of 25-pound bags that I have on hand, I could use quantity here, and then supply 25 in this field below for the estimated pounds per unit. This is totally up to you and what works for your operation. Because I keep my chicken feed loose in the bin, I'm going to set this back to pounds. And I can add an estimated value per unit, in this case per pound, so that I can know how much this asset is worth in my inventory. If this item was something that we produced and sold, it could optionally be linked to a product to sell in the market. We don't sell chicken feed, but the vegetables that we harvest, or sauces that we make from them, could be linked here if we needed. We can also choose to track the inventory in lots, which creates a separate group of items each time you add to the inventory. If the inventory expires after a given time, or if you need to make sure you're practicing first in, first out inventory, this could help you make sure you're using and selling the right items. Lastly, you can also get emailed notifications when your inventory is running low to help prevent you running out and make sure you reorder in advance. For our feed, we'll set it up with a 35-pound notification alert. That gives us about a week of food left for our smaller flock. And you can supply an email address for where that alert should be sent to. After clicking Next, we can then add to this inventory item. We'll add the 140 pounds that we currently have on hand to the central warehouse storage, bin C, that we created previously in the warehouse section. Since we're tracking the feed in lots, Farmbrite will automatically generate a lot number for us, but if you'd like to manually create one, you can supply it here. We can also add a source for where we got this chicken feed, and then save. You can use the buttons to add and remove when you buy more or have it delivered, or use the inventory. You can also manually adjust the amount that you have, in case you realize that you have more or less than what you previously expected. Also, if you need to adjust any of the details that you saw when we created the inventory item, you can click Edit in the upper right and perhaps change your alert or the value based on market conditions. Now that it's created, you can also store photos of your inventory item here and access a QR code for it here. We might print and laminate this code and then stick it on the bin where we store our chicken feed. That way, the next time we get a delivery, we can easily scan the code in Farmbrite's mobile app, add it to our inventory, and add a picture of the delivery as well. The QR code brings you directly to the details page when you scan it from the app. Now let's take a look at all the places that you can use this inventory. First, you have a selection to add and use inventory in the Quick Add menu in the upper right. This is an easy way to record the usage or an addition when you buy more. But just like the inventory add and remove buttons that we saw before, these are not associated with a particular animal, plant, or piece of equipment. They are really just adding and removing from your inventory. Of course, you can also use the inventory items directly from the animal, plant, and equipment records too. Let's navigate to livestock and take a look at our chicken flock and feed them using some of the feed that we just added. See that when we add the new feeding, we can subtract from our chicken feed inventory, where we also see that it's stored in the central warehouse in bin C. That will deduct these 5 pounds from the amount that we currently have on hand in our inventory. You can even schedule repeat feedings into the future. We'll feed our chickens through the end of the week. And the Farmbrite inventory will distinguish between what you have on hand currently and what you have projected with future scheduled feedings. I can also use inventory when recording treatments. If we were distributing medications to these chickens that we have tracked in our inventory, we can select it from this menu and record the total amount used. You can also do this on the Input tab, which can be used to associate your inventory usage of any item that you have on hand with this particular animal. Perhaps something like bedding or enrichment items, or the fencing for the coop used in this example. Let's take a look at the Accounting tab for this animal. Using the estimated unit value that we saw earlier when setting up the item, Farmbrite knows the cost of the inventory used on this flock and adds the feed, input, and breeding costs to a break-even amount. This helps us account for how much we are spending on this animal, even when our accounting expenses are not directly related to them. The inventory usage that we just saw is also applicable to your plantings as well. When you add treatments to your crops or grow locations, you'll be able to subtract from inventory here too for things like fertilizers, soil, and compost. Back over to our chicken flock. You can also add to inventory when recording a yield from an animal or a harvest from a plant. These might be things like eggs from our chicken flock, milk from our cows, or produce harvested from our crops. For our eggs, we'll record that we yielded 22 today, grade them, and then save and add to inventory. We'll associate the eggs with our eggs inventory item and see that we can add a different amount to the inventory than what we actually yielded from the hens. Perhaps we dropped one, and now we're only adding 21 to our inventory, and we'll add breakage as a reason. We'll pick a warehouse to store them in. We'll use the egg storage cabinet and see that a lot number from this yield is automatically generated. And then we'll save, where we can see that we yielded 22 and added 21 to our inventory in this lot number with 1 as a loss due to breakage. Now let's go back to the inventory section and see how the feeding and egg yield we just did affected our inventory. Let's take a look at that chicken feed and immediately notice that we have 105 pounds available, but 135 pounds currently stored. This difference is specifically attributed to the repeat scheduled future feedings that we added to our flock. You might recall that we fed 5 pounds today, March 11th, and scheduled repeated feedings throughout the week. In these next 6 days, we've already allocated 30 more pounds, But when we open the bin and take a look inside today, we would see the 135 pounds that are currently there. Now we'll click on the History tab on the left. Working from the bottom, you'll see the 140 pounds that we added to the bin today, and then 5 pounds removed each day for the feedings over the week. And if we navigate over to our eggs, we'll see those 21 eggs stored in that cabinet. We can also look at the history here and see the 21 that were added in that lot number from today's harvest. The last thing to take a look at in this video are your resource reports. You'll see them in this section of your standard reports. We'll see an equipment maintenance report to see what we've done to our trucks, tractors, and tools. Note this air filter change on our tractor that we did earlier in this video. There are also 3 inventory reports for us to use. The history report shows us the same in and out transactional ledger that we saw on the history tab of our chicken feed. What we had, what we used, and the total that we have available. The next 2 reports both show us our inventory summaries, but in different ways. The by location report is organized by warehouse and bin, showing you everything you have stored in those areas, regardless of the type of item that it is. We can easily see all the items that we keep in this barn with their quantities and value. But if you were looking for a specific item, we could run the inventory summary by type and see a specific item and all the different places that it's stored, along with what we have available there. We have cattle medications stored in 2 different places across our farm for easy access, so we know there's some in the Aurora barn, and also more in the West Side storage if we need it. And if these reports aren't exactly what you're looking for, you can always create a custom report for your equipment, equipment maintenance, inventory, or inventory logs. These let you design unique reports for your needs with any of the available fields on those record types. All right, you should have a good foundational understanding of how you can track your equipment, set up your storage locations, and track your inventory. If you need help with any of these features, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always glad to help.